Hello again. This is the Dick and Mike Show. I'm Mike, and Dick's over here waiting to jump in. We've been talking lately about parenting and the different environments that children grow up in. And we talked back and forth a lot, and the word sponge keeps coming up.
Little sponges.
The little sponges. And I wrote a book a little while ago, and one of the chapters in it is called The Sponge, and we talked about that on the show about a year ago. But I'm going to read this first part of it, and then we're going to go into some things we want to talk about tonight. When we are born, we are like a new sponge. We are clean and empty. There is neither love nor hate. A baby, like a sponge, has to stay in and absorb whatever is in the atmosphere it is living. If the atmosphere is full of love, support, kindness, honesty, fair play, ethical thinking, acceptance of others, then this is what it will absorb. If the atmosphere is full of hate, distrust, lying, drugs, and or alcohol, bigotry, racism, and the all for me attitude, then this is what it will absorb. Whatever atmosphere, community or family we grow up in, we, like the sponge, will keep absorbing until we are full. Then whatever we are full of will start to come back out. Now, we see so much of that on TV today. You know, the shootings, the fightings, what goes on, and then we see but what we don't hear about, and it's a shame, are the young students in school, in college, studying, working hard, going to school and having a job. What was the difference in the atmospheres they grew up? Because they're both, let's say, 19 years old.
Right.
So why is one so extremely different from the other?
That seems to be the eternal question. You know, the old nature or nurture thing. Why do extraordinary young people come out of horrible circumstances? And I've always believed that somewhere along the line, you talk about in all those things that are absorbed, there was some, one, two, maybe singular, maybe a couple, very powerful ethics that really appealed to them. Maybe they were around a lot of negative things, but two things or two people that were just what you talked about, very positive, and that overcame, or that really, they were really attracted to that, and that became the one that, you know, I want to be like them. They were able to differentiate that there is this other side because I've seen it,
Right.
and they pick up that and go forward.
Well, I believe that at a certain age we start to understand right from wrong. Not that we can't do this or we can't do that. We understand if it's wrong or it's right to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start to understand that. And I think that's for any kid at any age, or not any age, but at a certain age. And it doesn't matter your race, your ethnicity, or anything else, you understand that. But what the difference is, I find, is that some people have a different value of right from wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Some people accept the fact that if it's wrong, it's wrong. There's no partly wrong, almost right. It's either right or wrong. And yet some have a sliding scale.
And some have to challenge it and define it for themselves. You know, why is it wrong? I don't think so.
Well, young kids are going to do that anyway.
Sure.
That's their job. And that's the part where we talk about the positive of parenting and the power of parenting. Children, as we know, because you've raised yours and I've raised mine, are going to push the limits. That's their job. To find out how far can I go? What can I get away with? And so many times we hear today when some children get shot, young men get shot, or they get arrested, or they get in trouble, it's the parents' fault. It's the parents' fault. Well, no parents like to hear that, and they get very defensive. Well, I had to study, I had to go to school, I had to do 2 jobs, I had to do this, I was divorced, I was a single mom, I was a single dad. There's 10,000 reasons why they weren't the parent that they wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe that all parents want to be good parents in the beginning. If they don't, then they probably shouldn't have children. But
Yeah, I think one of the great myths too, Mike, is the social structure about you've got to be in a certain social strata,
yeah,
people that make a certain amount of money. tend to be better. There's some correlation, but I think you'd find most parents would agree that of the important things that they did in their life with their children, and I've often said this, not one positive thing I ever did for my kids cost me a dime.
Right.
It was really being there, being an example, doing the right thing. When I made a mistake, admit it and said, I shouldn't have done that, So it's really paying constant attention to the influence you're having, and that's free.
Yeah.
That explains why so many people of modest means, look at a whole 2 generations ago, the World War II generation.
Yeah.
Lived in little salt box houses, had an average of 5 kids, raised a very powerful generation because of who they were and what their values were.
And we as parents miss the point a lot. Like when I grew up, it was materialistic stuff, because we were growing through that early days in the 40s and the 50s into the 60s and 70s. And what you had was what made you. And I remember with my children, because in the early days I used to earn some decent money.
Right.
And they never wanted anything. They never wanted for anything. They had whatever they wanted. What they didn't have, because I worked in oil rigs and was gone a lot of times, was me.
Which is maybe what they wanted.
And that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
Now, we had some serious issues as they got older. And I told them, I did the best I could. They said, no, you didn't. And it took me years and years to grasp that, even as an adult growing up, that they didn't need all the stuff they had. They just wanted me.
Yep.
Well, I tried to tell them, in order to have me, I have to quit my job. They didn't care. They wanted me.
That's a powerful decision.
And that's a hard lesson to learn after the fact.
Right.
And my job today, or my role that I take on, is to encourage parents to reconsider their value system, their priorities when it comes to raising their children.
I saw, it was in an exercise one time where they had a picture of a young fellow, a young boy, probably 8 or 9 years old, sitting on the shore of a river with his dad fishing. And the challenge was the gentleman wanted us to write who this guy was. Tell us as much about this guy as you could. Well, everybody was looking at each other, stumped. You can't tell a thing. You don't know what education he has. You don't know what money he has. But he's there fishing with the boy, and the guy said, that's the most important thing about it. You don't know anything else. And yet, regardless of education, anyone could be in that situation with that young man, which was most important to him.
At any time.
Yeah.
And it was like years ago when I used to work for the youth group in Orlando, Florida, we used to have a program called Project Joy. And I've been trying to start it up here. It's where we call it Joining Olders and Youngers Together. And we used to take senior citizens and middle school kids and have them go fishing.
Great.
And they didn't know each other, but we paired them up. It was for 12 months. And we paired them up, and they would go fishing. Because in Florida, you can do that year-round. So they got to know each other. What a wonderful results happened out of that. Everybody got, I didn't find one bad example that was a bad thing come out of that situation. But the senior citizens had learned enough that they knew what the other kids needed. They'd gone past the parent stage.
The grandparents are better parents.
But much better parents because they're more tolerant.
Well, they had time to reflect like you did.
Well, grandparents' attitude is what parents need to have today.
Sure.
But they don't have it, they won't get it because it's not trained into them anymore. Patience, tolerance, and some of the stuff we're talking about here, we talked a lot about, in the past, we talked about alcohol and drugs and how that affects you as a person. Well, where I talk about here is how it affects when a mother. Now, we all know, we're all told mothers shouldn't drink any alcohol, anything that's bad that gets in their system, any marijuana, any drugs, any of this kind of stuff, and be careful of medications and everything else they take, because it goes directly into the bloodstream, because the baby's bloodstream and the mother's bloodstream are exactly the same.
Connected.
They're connected. And how so many women don't take it serious. Now, I know I have an example of a friend of mine who's had a child already, never smoked while she was pregnant, never did anything bad, But she was a smoker when she got stressed. She'd grab a little pot and have a little pot.
Oh, I thought a regular smoker.
No, no,
Pot smoker.
This is a pot smoker, not a cigarette smoker.
Right.
Just a pot smoker. And she didn't do much, she just did it every now and then. Well, apparently, she breastfeeds. So after the baby was born, she had a joint and ended up in the baby because when apparently so many months, and I didn't realize this, so many months after the baby's born, they still check the baby's feces at the hospitals. You wrap it up, every once in a while you wrap it up in the diaper and you take it in.
Could be, yeah.
Well, the feces had marijuana in it.
Mm.
So the baby had got the marijuana from the mother's milk. And boy, shit hit the fan. I mean.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've heard of crack babies,
Yep.
you know, people born in.
And alcohol, fetal syndrome.
Sure. And what a way to start out in the world when you're an infant. You haven't even done anything yet, and you've already got a monkey on your back.
Now, my question is, and I write a lot about that, and I talk to parents a lot about where in your dreams, where did it ever come from that you thought you could do that? You know better, and if you were to see your girlfriend having a baby, smoking a joint, as a parent, you'd say no. But you did it yourself. So why is it okay for you and not for them?
You know, Mike, I think like a lot of things, and we talked about this before with alcoholism, and my father used to say the one consistent thing he'd seen in any drug user or alcoholic, regardless of all the other circumstances, was a selfish individual.
Yeah, yep.
When it came right down to it, I can know all those things, yeah, I know, I mean, but I wanted to do it.
Yep.
And that's what, so it's the capacity, and this is what makes great parents and mothers. My wife is 85% of the quality of our life. I mean, I, like you, worked and was gone, but
Yep.
tried to do what I could. But it's the capacity to put yourself aside and think of something or love something bigger than yourself. That's what makes great mothers. That's what makes great parents.
Well, when I do some premarital counseling, and I do some talking to newlyweds or whatever, I ask them if they're going to have children to consider that when the child is born, for 10 years, that's their priority.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's great to get a promotion, it's great to be in the job, and it's great to do all the overtime and all that kind of stuff, but you can't do that. Children, after 10 years old, then they start to understand, well, dad's got to go to work, and that's fine. But that first 10 years, you want to consider how can you spend as much time as possible with your child.
And some people in the world of medicine and psychology will tell you that the first 4 or 5 years are as critical as you can get.
Yeah.
For temperament, for tone, for, as you say, without communication skills and understanding, but just sponging in the environment, just seeing what it's like around here.
Oh, they know everything.
Well, they feel it, they see it. They know how many times they were scared when mom and dad fought. They know, you know.
And their job is to explore.
Sure.
It's like I write about a child's world is 10 feet diameter. When they start to crawl,
Yeah.
their whole world is 10. Ours is we
Right.
can see the world. We understand the globe, the Europe, Asia. We understand all that. A child understands 10 feet. And when they can see 10 feet, they're going for it.
Sure.
And then when they get 10 feet, they see another 10
The
feet,
next
they're
10
going
feet.
for it.
Sure.
They have no idea what's going to happen when they get there. Hopefully they're okay.
Yeah.
But that's their world.
Sweet,
And
sweet.
we as parents need to understand that.
Right.
That they are continually, that's why they're in cupboards. Like my mom used to say, the best thing she did for all of us kids was she had a cupboard that wasn't locked, that had nothing but pots and pans in it. And we get in that cupboard and tear them pots and pans apart.
Oh, sure.
But we had the kitchen full of pots and pans, and that was our world, and we
Oh,
were
yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
Now, when we beyond that, then
Sure.
she had some other stuff to do. But parents need to understand there is so much day to day. Everything is, in a new day for a child is a world compared to us. We think maybe a year ahead, or when I get 5 years old, when I get
Right.
35, when I get 45. They're thinking tomorrow.
And parents have an idea often of a structure that's important. We got to get them into dance. We got to get them into martial arts. We got to get them into this. We're going all the time. We've provided every access, every outlet. You've been exposed to all kinds of good things. a relative of mine made a remark some time ago that his son had never had a pickup game of anything, what we called pickup, like, hey, what are you doing? There's an empty lot between two houses.
Yeah.
We played tackle football. Every now and then somebody would come home with a bloody nose, and then the mother who had the yard would call your mom and says, I saw him leaving here with his nose bleeding. Is he okay? You know? But they never had a pickup game. Everything was organized. So this is where I say there's a difference between being well kept and well raised.
Yeah.
You talk about the things that are important, that are just pure human, and then so many people get caught up in they're well kept.
Yep. And we talk about, especially the younger ones, and we talked about the marijuana smoke. You know, everything that a woman puts into her body goes into the child. Doesn't matter what it is. Even spices.
Sure.
You'll see when my friend was pregnant, when she ate a spicy meal,
Oh, yeah.
that baby would go ballistic.
I remember that. Yeah.
Bam, 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 pushing on the stomach and all kinds of things going
And when
on.
nursing, don't
Oh.
eat those things because the baby will get colicky or whatever, you know. So.
Yeah. We have to understand that we are responsible for the future of that child, because they're going to take our place. You know, and I'm just beating a dead horse here because everybody knows what I'm
Right,
talking about.
right.
It's just that it's so important to bring it back to the child and being a good parent, because it is the parents. Whatever environment, like a sponge, like we keep saying, it keeps coming back to the sponge. They are sponges, and they learn everything. And there's a paper out that I think we've talked about on here before too, that most children learn how to interact as an adult with adults by the time they're 10 years old.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. And when I explain that to parents, that they watch you talk about your neighbor behind his back to your wife, they watch you, how you interact with that neighbor you may like or not like, what you say about your boss, what you say about things, they hear all that.
What mood you come home in, you know?
Yeah, when you come home from work and you're in a bad mood, you
Right.
come home from work, you're in a good mood, they know how to interact as an adult with an adult.
There's a cute little Toyota commercial, I think it's Toyota, or maybe Subaru, but the kid's in his little toy car on the lawn, and the father says, you ready? And gonna hand him the keys, and the kid visualizes the traffic
yeah,
jams,
yeah.
and he says, no, I'm good, you know. They figured out a lot already.
If we could think that far ahead
Yeah.
of what our kids are learning. And all we have to do is sit down and watch them. And what are they gonna do tomorrow? What do they wanna do? What have I done that they hear? Now, you close the door and you and your wife had a discussion, maybe a heated one. They hear it.
Mm-hmm.
If you think they're sleeping, guess again.
Oh, yeah.
Because kids are not, people say kids are heavy sleepers. They're not heavy sleepers.
Right.
They wake up at anything that's different than their comfort zone. And then we talked here too about kids sleeping. You know, in the very early stages, you and I talked about back or stomach. You know, small things help them survive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's that, SIDS, sudden infant, whatever it is, I forget.
Death syndrome.
Death syndrome. 99% of the children that die from SIDS are sleeping on their backs.
Mm-hmm.
Lay them on their stomachs.
Right.
If they vomit, at least the vomit, make a mess, but it'll be out of their system.
You know, I talked to my own kids about this, and I've said you'll have a lot of ideas about the things you want them to be involved in, what they should do, where you live, how many toys they have, and everything. I said, but when if your child was going away to school in a foreign country, you spend a lot of time talking to them about what to expect, how to behave,
Yeah.
how to be safe, that type of thing. And yet, you know the one thing for sure when your child is small is that someday they're going to leave the nest.
Yep.
So when do you start talking to them about that? When do you start talking to them as the reality that's going to happen? Well, little sponges that they are, you should be doing it immediately. Instead of just saying no to something, say, no, you don't want to do that because this will happen, da-da-da-da-da. And if you really want them to be equipped to handle things, when do you start? Well, I started right away. My sister used to tell me that I always talk to her nephew like an adult. She just made that remark one day, and I said, I don't know. I don't know what to say to that. But I always
Yeah.
talked to him, when he had something, I'd answer him and tell why.
Yeah.
And so we know that's the one thing for absolute sure. We hope. We don't need the 35-year-old kid living in the basement like on the TV commercials. But the one thing we know, we don't know who their spouse will be. We don't know what educational path they'll choose. We don't know how much money they'll make, maybe where they live. But we know they're going out into the world. When do you start preparing them for that? I say immediately.
Well, we talk a lot with parents about house rules. Now, most families have mom's rules and dad's rules.
Mm-hmm.
Mom says this, dad says that. I tell them, forget that. Get together, get a set of 5 or 10 basic house rules. They need to be age appropriate so they can change as they get older. But the house rules become the established law of the land. And mom and dad are not responsible anymore.
Yeah,
It's the house.
yeah.
So it takes the pressure off mom and dad for one to say, well, the other one, mom said I got to do this, or dad said I got to do that. No, no, no. The
In
house
this
says.
house,
Yep. No.
heard that a lot when I was young. In this
Well,
house.
Yeah, well, this house rules establishes to the community,
Mhm.
to the village, to the town, to the city, to the state, to the country. Because there's an established set of rules everywhere you go.
Right.
And that just alone is a subconscious learning, but they learn that wherever they go, there's gonna be rules. And in this house, and they'll end up looking at the rules and know what they have to do, when they have to do them. With each rule becomes a consequence. And I tell parents, no more punishment. Get rid of the word punishment out of your vocabulary. It's a consequence. For every action, there's an equal and opposite
Sure.
reaction.
Yeah.
There's a positive consequence and a negative consequence. You get to work every day, you get a paycheck at the end of the week, that's a positive consequence. A negative consequence, if you don't go to work every day, you get fired.
Right.
Children need to learn there's consequences for their actions. And there needs to be a consequence for each rule.
They need to fail. They need to be allowed to fail.
Yep,
We can't protect their little feelings all the time. Everybody gets an award, that type of thing.
yep,
It's a natural part of life. When my kids were growing up, one of the things I told them is I said that you'll see people that'll come apart in life. Something will happen to them. It might be
Yeah.
losing a job, a relationship, I said, things happen to you. That's a given. But the difference will be those people that come apart are the ones that didn't think anything should happen to them. So on top of the event, they've got the self-pity, the anguish, the anger. What you have to understand is that there'll be periods in your life, no matter how good you are, what a great human being you are, what I used to call, you'll have your day in the barrel.
Yeah.
Things will happen. So just deal with that. Don't, work through it, keep going, and on the other side of it, know that there'll be another one coming someday. But if you're not alarmed by that, if you know, as you say, these are just consequences, things happen.
yep.
It's not a condemnation of me, it's not a complete failure in life, it's life. The old, into every life, a little rain must fall. Kids need to know that too, that that's a part of life.
Well, we talk about just the house rules, because that establishes so many things for the future. First of all, the house rules set a comfort zone. The kids know what they have to do. Their life is structured enough at a very, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Right.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They understand their zone. They can grow really well within that comfort zone, and they can grow safe and comfortable. If there's no rules, children are always trying to figure out, what can I get away with? What's next? What can I do? Where can I go? What can I do? Rather than concentrate on enjoying what they've got, then that helps them grow within the set of rules. The other thing is, I tell them about every 3 to 5 months or 8 months, change one of the rules. Just change it for the sake of changing it, because that happens. That happens in real life. Just to catch them off guard, and they got to stay on top of the rules. The rules change at work, in the county, in the city. The rules change all the time. So if you can get them used to watching the house rules, and when one changes, not be shocked by it. Oh, now I got to do this instead. And then maybe a month later, bring it back. But if you change it a little bit every now and then,
Yeah.
it helps them adjust.
And to parents, if you think kids don't want structure and rules, you're out of your mind.
Oh, they do.
The flip side of testing the limits and pushing as far as they can go is really, I wonder what would happen if I did this.
Yeah.
So they're trying to find out what the rules are. I wonder what would happen if I stepped off the roof. Well, there's gravity, now I know about that. I always equated it to putting a kid in an athletic event, and you didn't tell him the rules.
Yeah.
And now, everybody's booing at him. He's wandering around aimlessly, doesn't know. Picture him out in a basketball court, doesn't know where to run, what to do. The whole thing is going awry. And he looks at you tearfully over on the sideline with that, begging for help and guidance. And then you tell him the last part of it. You're not coming out. Well, that's kind of like life.
Yeah.
So if you don't think kids want to know, again, not who they should marry, where they should live, but the basic rules of how to get along, how to be safe, what works, you're nuts. They want to know. And that's the one thing you can give them that doesn't cost any money. Not a thing.
And as long as you can keep that, as I say, as firm, fair, and consistent
Right.
through the early years, then when they get ready, they can make adjustments and make changes and deal with the flow, find somebody different. Well, I don't like that person because they don't have any rules.
Right.
Or they're unstructured in their life, or I like them because they're unstructured in their life. Whatever reason, you give them the tools to change and modify and go with the flow, but if you don't support them in those first learning years,
Mhm.
and there's even songs about that. There's all kinds of stuff out there about the early years.
Right.
But I think the early years have to come back earlier. We talk about 12 and up. As you know, we have to start back at 0 to 10.
I always talked about that in the high schools, Mike. The thing was when they had a mill age or they wanted to attract attention to the school system, the old joke was you stop the buses and stop bouncing the balls.
Yeah.
And then people will pay attention. But I said, when's the last time they went down to the 5th grade and really paid a lot of attention? I advocated, I said, as a taxpayer, I would pay for 2 full-time teachers in every classroom up to the 5th grade and get a reward. We'd find out who needs glasses, who has a reading disability, but make sure everybody is proficient in reading and basic math by the time they go on to the later grades. And I said, you'd have less trouble in high school. And someone challenged me that, that was kind of idealistic. And I said, wait a minute. The universities do that. They make sure that everybody that comes in is at least basically equipped to be in that university.
Yeah.
Then they put 300 kids in an auditorium. And there's no spitwad fights, and we can do the same thing at the lower levels if we start to realize that the formative years are the most important.
And somehow the kids have to know it's for them.
Right.
If they don't, if they think it's just a token, I'm just here to earn my check. I'm going to stand up here and teach you and lecture you, and whether you learn it or not, it's up to you. You're on your own. They can't handle that. They're not ready for that. When they graduate and, like you say, into the college era, that's different. They're self-motivated.
Right.
They're going to college because they want to, whereas high school and grade school and middle school, you got to. I mean...
And the parents that don't pay attention to these formative years, up through 5 years, they send their kids off to public school, and look who gets them. That teacher's in there, not with all well-prepared, serious students. There are teachers in there with a variety of young people from everywhere, many that are watching videos all night long, loud, and nobody's helping the kid with their homework and that type of thing. So it becomes, a conflict of someone who knows what you should be doing, and the fact that you're not doing it, and the child suffers. We got about a minute left, and the child suffers for it.
Well, and that's the problem that I'm finding, and that's why I write these books on behaviors and self-learning, and the next book is on parenting, the power of parenting, that we have to start earlier and pay attention earlier and accept our responsibility earlier. Then we can have our fun when the kids are 10 and 12 years old.
Right.
We can leave them alone and trust they're going to be okay.
Yep.
They're going to have a value system. They're going to have integrity. They're going to know right from
And
wrong.
it's a blessing if they like you enough to come back for Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner, but your real goal is to make sure that they're okay in the world.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Dick. It was a good night again tonight,
Yeah.
and I can't wait for the next. I know your topic next time, and
Yeah.
I'm waiting forward to that one.
Be a couple weeks, we're gonna talk about something very powerful it's called A Widow's Tale, and it's something I've been working on with a survivor of a World War II veteran who's just getting washed by the VA system.
Oh, I can't wait for that one.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.